One time, I swore I'd never step foot in that house again, but when I heard my own voice whispering from the attic, begging me to come home, I couldn't stay away. I shouldn't have opened that door, because what was waiting inside wasn't me anymore. The train windows blurred with rain as I pressed my forehead against the cold glass, watching the countryside roll by in streaks of gray and green. I hadn't been back here in years, 7, maybe 8, and yet every mile closer to that old house felt like sinking back into a memory I'd buried alive. My mother's death had forced me to return. There was paperwork to sign, furniture to clear, and the real estate agent's emails had become more insistent by the week. But if I was being honest, I could have handled it all from afar. I didn't need to come back. Something in me just did. By the time I reached the old lane, twilight had already slipped into that bluish hour where everything feels a little unreal. The air smelled like wet soil and pine sap. The gravel crunched beneath my shoes as I dragged my suitcase up the uneven path. The house stood exactly where I'd left it, tilted slightly to one side, roof patched with darker tiles, ivy coiling around its chimney like a slow strangling hand. The porch light was still broken. I stopped at the bottom of the steps. The windows looked darker than I remembered, like eyes that had forgotten how to blink. For a long time I just stood there, suitcase handle clenched tight, wondering if the house was looking back. When I finally pushed the door open, the hinges gave a low groan, the same one I used to hear when my mother came home late from her night shifts. The smell hit me first, old wood, mildew, and something faintly sweet beneath it. Lilies. She used to fill vases with them, convinced they made the house feel alive. The living room hadn't changed much. The floral wallpaper had peeled near the corners, and the old grandfather clock in the hallway was still ticking despite the fact that I'd never seen anyone wind it. My reflection wavered in the dusty mirror above the mantel, pale skin, dark circles under my eyes, rainwater in my hair. I looked like someone else standing there, someone the house might not recognize. I'd told myself not to linger, but every room seemed to pull me deeper. The kitchen light flickered when I tried the switch. On the counter, I found a mug still upside down on a drying rack, as if someone had washed it recently. My mother's tea tin was still there too, the one with faded bluebirds painted on the lid. I ran my thumb over the metal. It was warm. That night, I set up camp in my old bedroom upstairs. The room was smaller than I remembered, ceiling lower, air heavier. My childhood bed still creaked under me, the frame crooked but sturdy. The wallpaper had yellowed, but my teenage posters still clung stubbornly to the walls, ghosts of people I used to admire. I unpacked the essentials, then opened the window to let the rain air in. The night outside was quiet, almost too quiet for a house this far from town. As I lay back, I could hear the faint hum of the wind through the cracks in the window frame. The sound reminded me of something I'd forgotten. A lullaby my mother used to hum, soft and tuneless. I didn't want to remember more. Not yet. It must have been past midnight when I woke to the creak of a floorboard in the hallway. My breath caught. The air had gone still, heavy. For a second I thought it was just the house settling, the kind of noise that comes from wood expanding in the damp. But then it came again, slow, deliberate, a step. I reached for my phone on the bedside table, but the screen stayed black when I tried to unlock it. No light, no sound. Just that quiet, steady creak in the hall. "Hello?" I whispered, instantly regretting it. The sound stopped. My heart thudded hard enough to make my chest ache. I slid out of bed, bare feet meeting the cold wood floor. The door was half open, the gap swallowing a thin slice of darkness from the hall. I could see the faint outline of the staircase beyond it, the banister casting long shadows that reached toward me. "Probably just wind," I muttered. It wasn't wind. A whisper brushed against the silence, a voice so faint I thought it was in my head. It came from upstairs, the attic. I froze. Nobody had been up there in years. The door was nailed shut after what happened when I was 15. I forced the thought away, focusing on the sound. It came again, soft and stretched out, like someone struggling to remember how to speak. "Elena." My name. The voice sounded distant but close enough to make the back of my neck prickle. I didn't breathe. For a second, it almost sounded like my mother. I stepped back, hit the wall. My heart pounded in my throat, my palms slick with sweat. The whisper didn't come again. Only the faint ticking of that old grandfather clock downstairs filled the silence. I stayed frozen for what felt like hours before finally climbing back into bed, pulling the blanket to my chin like a child. The rain had stopped outside, but water still dripped somewhere, steady, rhythmic, as if the house was breathing again after holding its breath too long. When I finally closed my eyes, I could still hear that voice echoing faintly through my mind. Not just calling my name, saying something else, something I couldn't quite make out. But as sleep dragged me under, I realized one thing with a clarity that made my skin crawl. The house wasn't empty when I arrived. It had been waiting. The next morning, sunlight spilled weakly through the curtains, and for a second, I almost convinced myself I'd dreamed everything. The voice, the footsteps, the weight of that stillness pressing on my chest. Almost, until I saw the attic door. From my bedroom, I could see it across the hall. It had always been nailed shut. My father did that after the incident, but now the nails were loose. The wood around the lock was splintered, as if someone had been pulling at it from the inside. I told myself it must have been weather damage. The storm last night, maybe, but the nails on the floor looked fresh. Their edges still glinted with metal that hadn't yet rusted. I spent most of the morning cleaning the downstairs rooms just to keep my mind busy. The house was quiet, except for the steady tick of that damn grandfather clock and the occasional groan of shifting timber. Every time I passed the mirror in the hallway, I caught glimpses of movement that didn't match my own, like something lagging half a second behind me. I stopped looking. By noon, I'd convinced myself to explore the attic, at least enough to make sure no raccoons or squatters had made their way in. I fetched a hammer from the shed and climbed the creaky staircase, each step protesting under my weight. The attic door felt colder than it should have been. When I touched the handle, the chill spread through my palm like frostbite. I hesitated, then pulled. It opened easily, too easily. The smell hit first, damp, dust, and something metallic beneath it, like old pennies. The room was dim, lit only by a sliver of daylight from a small round window. Dust motes hung in the air, shimmering faintly. The floorboards were littered with old boxes, photo albums, and strangely small toys. A porcelain doll sat propped in the corner, her glass eyes fogged over. I hadn't had dolls as a child. I crouched to open one of the boxes. Inside were stacks of photographs bound with twine. Most were faded beyond recognition, but one caught my eye. It was a family portrait. My mother, my father, me in the middle, except there was someone else standing just behind us, a blur of a figure, tall and thin, with a shadow where its face should have been. I blinked and looked again, but the shadow was gone, just a smudge. That was when the floor creaked behind me. I turned so fast the box fell over, photos scattering across the floor. The doorway was empty, the hall beyond dark. I forced out a laugh. "You're losing it, Lena," I muttered, rubbing my arms. The attic was freezing now, and my breath came out in pale wisps. I packed up the photos and went downstairs, but the air in the house had shifted. It felt thicker, like the walls were closer. I couldn't explain it, but I kept catching whiffs of lilies again. Fresh ones this time, except I hadn't brought any flowers. When night came, I tried to distract myself by scrolling through my phone. No signal. The Wi-Fi network was gone, even though I'd seen the router's lights earlier. My hand shook as I hit record on the voice memo app. "Okay," I said quietly, forcing steadiness into my voice. Day 2. The house is fine. No more noises. Probably just the wind. I ended the recording, then hit play out of habit. There was silence for a few seconds, then a faint shuffle, like footsteps on wood. And then, softly, my voice. Except it wasn't me. It said, "Don't lie to them, Lena." I dropped the phone. It hit the carpet with a dull thud, still playing the distorted echo of my own words. My throat went dry. I didn't move for a full minute, staring at the device like it might bite me. When I finally picked it up again, the recording was gone. Deleted. I couldn't remember deleting it. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I left every light on, the hallway bulb humming faintly. Around 2 in the morning, I heard a soft knock 3 times at my bedroom door. I froze. "Who's there?" I asked, voice trembling. Nothing. The silence was so complete it almost rang in my ears. I pulled the blanket over me and waited, heart thundering. Minutes passed. The clock ticked somewhere far below, steady and mocking. Eventually, I drifted into uneasy sleep. When I woke, the door was open, just slightly, enough for a sliver of shadow to fall across the floor. I pushed it shut with shaking hands and swore I'd leave first thing in the morning, except I didn't. Something in me refused to go. Maybe it was guilt, Maybe it was that same strange pull I'd felt since I arrived, the feeling that the house wanted me here. I spent the afternoon outside, sitting on the porch steps trying to ignore the way the windows seemed to darken whenever I looked up. The neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, shuffled past the gate around dusk. She hadn't aged much. Her eyes were sharp, suspicious, the kind of gaze that feels like it sees through you. "Didn't think you'd come back," she said. "Just clearing things out," I replied. Her lips tightened. "You shouldn't stay after dark. That house, it remembers things better than people do." I frowned up. What's that supposed to mean? But she just kept walking, muttering something about promises, broken twice. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her words. The clock downstairs chimed 3 times and I jolted awake. My phone buzzed on the table, screen lighting up with a new voice memo. I hadn't recorded anything. Hands shaking, I hit play. It was me again. Same tone, same pitch. Only this time, the voice whispered, "Don't open the attic again." And then, right before the clip ended,
There was a faint laugh. It wasn't mine. I stared at the dark ceiling, the sound of it still echoing inside me, and for the first time since I arrived, I knew. This wasn't about the house remembering me. It was about something in the house making sure I wouldn't forget it. I should have left right then. I really should have. But I didn't. And that was the beginning of everything that came after. By the 3rd morning, the air in the house felt heavier, like every breath carried a weight that didn't belong to me. I'd stopped checking my phone for messages. The voice recordings were gone again, wiped clean overnight. The Wi-Fi still refused to connect. It was as if the house had decided what I could or couldn't hear. I told myself I'd make one final sweep through the attic before leaving. Just one. I needed to prove to myself that everything, every sound, every whisper had a rational explanation. Maybe there were speakers hidden up there, old wiring, anything. I needed a reason. The stairs groaned louder that morning, each step echoing like a complaint. When I reached the attic, the door was already ajar. I was sure I'd locked it. Sunlight leaked through the round window, cutting across the dust like a blade. I could see my breath again, even though it wasn't cold outside. The air smelled faintly of copper, sharp, metallic. The same scent I remembered from childhood nosebleeds. I crouched by the box of photographs I'd left open. The family portrait was still there, but something about it was different. My father's face had faded completely, the ink eaten away, while mine seemed darker, as if redrawn in fresh graphite. My eyes looked wrong, wider, sharper. A noise came from behind the wall, soft scraping, like nails dragging slowly against wood. I froze. The sound traveled along the beams, circling me. Then it stopped. Something inside that wall was moving. I pulled one of the loose boards away. Dust burst out, thick and choking. Behind it was a small hollow space filled with torn fabric. Small objects, ribbons, buttons, a child's shoe, and beneath them, a notebook. The cover was water-stained, edges blackened. My hand shook as I opened it. The handwriting was jagged but familiar. It was my mother's. March 12th. She's still talking to the walls. I told her it's just her imagination, but she keeps saying the girl in the mirror isn't her. I don't know what to do anymore. My throat went dry. Pages later, April 2nd. The whispering's louder now. Sometimes I hear it too. It says my name and hers, over and over. I've sealed the attic. I can't let her go back up there. I turned another page, smudged and barely legible. April 15th. If I fail, forgive me. The house won't let her leave. The last line was underlined twice, pressed so hard the pen tore through the page. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear hit the paper. I closed the book, hands trembling. The air shifted again. Something soft brushed my shoulder. I spun around. The porcelain doll that had been sitting in the corner was now lying in the center of the room, face cracked down the middle. "No," I whispered, backing away. "No, no, no." The house groaned. A deep guttural sound that vibrated through the floorboards. The round attic window flickered with light, just once like a heartbeat. I stumbled toward the stairs, clutching the notebook. The moment my foot hit the top step, a whisper followed me down. "Don't leave me again." It was my voice. I ran. Downstairs, the mirrors were all fogged over, every one of them. My reflection stared back in patches, fragmented. In one mirror, my mouth was open when I hadn't moved. In another, my eyes blinked half a second too late. I grabbed my bag, phone, and car keys, but when I opened the front door,
There was nothing, not the road, not the trees, just thick white fog stretching endlessly, swallowing the horizon. It pressed close, silent and unmoving. I took a step forward, but the air around me felt wrong, too dense, like walking through water. The house loomed behind me, and when I glanced back at its windows, I saw movement. Someone standing in the upstairs hall, half hidden by the curtain. I dropped the keys. The shape tilted its head slowly, like it recognized me. I stumbled back inside before I could stop myself. The door slammed on its own. The grandfather clock chimed even though it wasn't supposed to. Each chime vibrated through my chest, and for the first time, I felt certain the sound wasn't marking time. It was counting down. I sat on the living room floor for hours, the notebook on my lap. Every time I tried to read another page, the handwriting seemed to change, curling into letters that weren't English anymore. The smell of lilies grew stronger, almost nauseating. Then, from the wall behind the couch, came a faint thump. Once, twice, 3 times. I leaned close, heartbeat roaring in my ears. The plaster was cold beneath my fingers. On impulse, I whispered, "Who's there?" Something on the other side answered, not in words, but in rhythm. It tapped back. 3 short knocks, then silence. That night, I dreamed I was a child again, sitting in the same living room. My mother was humming that tune, soft and tuneless, the one I'd nearly forgotten. But this time, she was facing the wrong way, toward the wall. I walked closer, trying to see what she was looking at. When she turned, half her face was gone. I woke with a scream caught in my throat, soaked in sweat. The grandfather clock read 3:03. The sound of breathing filled the room, but it wasn't mine. It came from inside the wall. I pressed my palm against it, and the plaster pulsed back once, like a heartbeat. That was the moment I stopped pretending it was just the house, because if the walls remember everything, then they remember me. And I'm starting to wonder what else they remember that I don't. By the 4th night, I had stopped trying to convince myself I was sane. The house had taken that privilege away, every creak, every flicker of shadow in the corner of my vision. It all moved with a strange, synchronized intent, like the house was breathing in rhythm with me. When I inhaled, the walls seemed to expand. When I exhaled, the floorboards sank just slightly, as though the whole place were alive and listening. I spent most of the morning in silence, sitting at the kitchen table with the old notebook open in front of me. The handwriting wasn't changing anymore. It had settled into something I could finally read again. Or maybe it was allowing me to read it now. April 21st. She's back again. She says she forgives me, but she shouldn't even be here. I buried her memory. I buried her name. I traced the words with my fingertip. "Who?" I whispered. "Who did you bury, Mom?" The light above me flickered twice, as though the house had an answer it couldn't say aloud. I closed the notebook and looked at the hallway mirror across from me. My reflection stared back with tired eyes, hollowed by sleepless nights. Then, as I watched, something behind my reflection moved, someone standing just over my shoulder. I spun around. Nothing. Just the empty hall, the faint smell of lilies growing stronger. I should have run then, but instead, I did the opposite. I spoke. "If someone's here, if you can hear me, just show me." The mirror fogged instantly. My breath hitched. And then faintly, in the condensation, words began to form, drawn by something invisible. "I never left." I stumbled back so fast I hit the counter. My pulse roared in my ears. "Who are you?" I shouted. "What do you want?" The air around me thickened, vibrating with a low hum that made the dishes tremble in the cupboard. Then came the voice, soft, feminine, heartbreakingly familiar. "Don't you remember me, Lena?" The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I pressed my palms to my ears, but it was inside my head now, curling around my thoughts like smoke. I recognized the voice then, not my mother's. It was higher, softer, a girl's voice. My own, but younger. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not possible." The hum grew louder until a sharp crack echoed through the room. The mirror shattered. I screamed and covered my face as glass rained down. When I dared to open my eyes, the words were gone, but a single line remained etched into the fractured surface, jagged but clear. "You promised you'd stay." That afternoon, I found myself drawn to the attic again, though I didn't remember deciding to go. My feet carried me there like they'd done it 1,000 times before. The air was colder now, and the metallic scent was stronger, making the back of my throat burn. The doll still lay on the floor where I'd left it, face split clean down the middle. I stepped over it and crouched beside the small hollow in the wall. Inside, where the notebook had been, something else waited. A folded piece of paper that hadn't been there before. I unfolded it carefully. It was a child's drawing, 2 girls standing side by side in front of a house. One of them had a smile drawn in bright red crayon. The other's face had been scribbled out violently, over and over, until only the outline remained. Beneath it, in a shaky scrawl, someone had written, "You took my name." My stomach turned. My hands started trembling. "What name?" I whispered. "What are you talking about?" The floorboard beneath me groaned in reply. Then, whispering, louder this time, clear and overlapping, like multiple versions of my own voice speaking at once. "You left me. You left me. You left me." I stumbled back, knocking over a box. Photos spilled across the floor. Images of the same house, same walls, but empty. Always empty. In one of them, a shadow stood at the window upstairs. Its outline matched mine perfectly. Suddenly, I wasn't alone. A figure stood at the edge of the attic, half in shadow. She looked like me, but not quite. Her hair was longer, darker, clinging to her face as if wet. Her skin was pale as wax. When she smiled, it stretched too wide, showing teeth that looked too sharp. "Who are you?" I whispered. She tilted her head, same as the shape I'd seen in the window days before. "You know," she said, voice soft and shaking, but still mine, "you just don't want to remember." "I'm not you." Her expression shifted, almost pitying. "You're right," she murmured. "You're what she made instead." The attic lights flickered, buzzing like trapped flies. I stumbled backward, hit the wall. "Stay away from me." She took a step closer, bare feet leaving dark, wet prints on the floorboards. "You buried me," she whispered. "They made you forget. But I'm still here. I always was." The air grew thick and wet, smelling of lilies and rust. My breath came shallow. Her hand reached out, cold, trembling. The nails blackened, and for a moment it brushed my cheek. It felt like touching ice. "I just want to come back," she said, and then she was gone. The attic was empty again. The air still vibrated faintly, but the shape, my other self, had vanished like smoke. I sank to the floor, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. My skin burned where she'd touched me, and when I looked down, a faint mark, like a handprint, was forming there. I stayed there until night fell, until the clock downstairs began its hollow chiming again. I didn't move when the walls began to creak or when whispers filled the air once more, soft as breath. I knew now that I wasn't losing my mind. I wasn't imagining the voice or the movement in the mirrors. I wasn't even haunted by some stranger. The thing in this house wanted me because it was me, the part I wasn't supposed to remember, the one my mother tried to hide. And now that it had found me again, I realized with a cold, sick certainty, it wasn't going to let me go this time. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. The air was too still, too heavy. My throat ached with the metallic taste of fear. My reflection still sat in the cracked mirror across the room, her head tilted, eyes unblinking. I tried to stand, but the floorboards moaned under my weight as if warning me not to move. The house had changed overnight. The wallpaper had peeled further, exposing blackened wood beneath like rotting skin. Every step I took echoed twice, once from me, once from somewhere just behind. "Stop it," I whispered. I wasn't sure if I meant to the house or to myself. I made it to the hallway. The smell of lilies was stronger now, suffocating. The framed family photo on the wall had warped, our faces stretched and discolored. Only mine remained clear. In the reflection of the glass, a second me stood behind my shoulder. I spun, but the hallway was empty. I ran toward the front door, but it wasn't there. The frame still stood, but beyond it was just more hallway, folding in on itself, endless. Every turn led me back to the same spot, like I was walking in circles inside a memory that wouldn't release me. Then I heard her. The voice. Soft. Familiar. My voice. But younger. "Don't leave me again." I turned toward the sound, heart pounding, and found myself facing the attic door. It was wide open now, breathing. The darkness inside wasn't just shadow. It pulsed. I should have run, but something deep inside me, something broken and curious, whispered, "You owe her this." The steps creaked under my weight as I climbed. Each breath I took sounded louder, like the air was pressing against my chest. When I reached the top, I saw her. The girl. Me. 8 years old, wearing the same blue nightdress I'd been buried in the attic box. Her eyes were milky and soft, but her expression, God, it was so calm. "You came back," she said, voice sweet as honey. "You promised you would." I shook my head. "I didn't. I left because I had to." Her small hands twisted the hem of her dress, nails dark with soil. "You forgot me. You forgot us." The walls began to hum again, soft at first, then louder, a vibration I could feel in my teeth. The floorboards rippled beneath her feet like waves. "I tried to forget," I said, "but you wouldn't let me." She smiled, sad, innocent, knowing. "Because you are me. You can't forget yourself." The house groaned, the sound almost like laughter. The floor split between us, revealing a black void that breathed warmth. My reflection in the mirror across the attic stepped closer, separate now, moving even when I didn't. "Come home," the reflection said. "We've waited so long." I stumbled back, but there was nowhere to go. The attic was closing in, walls flexing like muscle. "You left your body here," the little girl said softly. "We've been keeping it warm." Then everything hit at once, memories that weren't supposed to be mine. The crash of thunder the night I ran away, my mother screaming, the attic door slamming shut. The smell of lilies covering decay. I didn't leave this house when I was 15. I died here. My knees buckled. I felt the splinters bite through my palms. Tears burned down my cheeks. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not true." But she reached for me with her small cold hand, touching my face. Her skin was soft and damp like fresh clay. "It's all right," she said. "You're home now." The walls exhaled, the lilies bloomed again. Filling the attic with their choking sweetness, my reflection stepped closer until her breath fogged the glass. "Rest," she said, voice identical to mine. "Let the house remember for you." I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, the air was calm again. Morning light filtered through the cracked window, painting the attic gold. No dust, no decay, everything pristine, untouched. A car pulled up outside. A young couple stepped out, holding hands, smiling. One of them said, "It doesn't look so bad, right?" They had no idea. I watched from the attic window as they walked toward the front door. My hand pressed against the glass, and I saw the faint outline of the small girl beside me smiling. "It's okay," she whispered. "Someone new to love us." The front door creaked open, and I realized I was still here, still home. Sometimes I wonder if I ever really left that house, or if it simply learned to wear my face when I tried to escape. Maybe memory isn't what haunts us. Maybe we haunt it. If you heard my story, tell me. Would you have gone back inside? Or do you think you could have forgotten me? Comment on what you believe really happened.